So it's now 4:09. I think we can start the session. So first of all, we'd like to thank the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors in Kenya for hosting this space. It's quite a critical time for Kenya right now as we discuss the GMO agenda. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of information in the space that is going around. And so today it's more of bringing clarity through the agricultural experts. My name is Nekesa Wafula. I'm the Business Development Manager for Smallholder Value Chains at Crop Nutrition Laboratory Services. And looking forward to having further discussions. So I will let the speakers introduce themselves, then we delve into the space. We'll start with Jen. Jen. Lydia, if Jen is not ready. Lydia, please unmute yourself and then you can be able to speak.
Okay, thank you very much, Nekesa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lydia Kimani. I'm with the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors, and I work with the SOCA as the Liaison and Government Relations Officer. I'm delighted to be participating in the discussion today, and it comes at a very critical time, especially when we are days away from the an African COP. And this issue on GMOs touches very strongly on issues of climate change, biodiversity loss, the preservation of indigenous seeds. So I'm looking forward, and of course, the trade implications that come with it. I'm looking forward to a very invigorating conversation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lydia. We have Jane. Jane, please.
Thanks, Nekesa. Thanks, everyone. My name is Jane Musindi. I work at the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors of Kenya as a CEO. Apart from that, I am a good agricultural practices compliance specialist. I basically deal with markets and standards, market access and standards. I'm happy to be here because this issue of GMO touches on all the standards we're supposed to comply to, especially to access our markets, be it the EU, be it our African regional markets. So I would like farmers to have as much information as possible before they make decisions on which way to go, because at the moment, in as much as we have been allowed to grow and import GMOs, it's up to us as farmers to make informed decisions. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. We'll have Dr. Kirimi, please.
Thank you so much, Nekesa, and good morning or good afternoon, all of you. My name is Kirimi Sindi, as you have heard. I am a practitioner in research. I've worked with the Sinji Centers for the last 15 years, and currently I'm working with African Population and Health Research Center, where I'm a program manager, and I'm currently working on trying to change the research ecosystem in Africa, and also trying to change the research culture in Africa, as well as trying to figure out how we can ensure that African policymakers use research output to making better decisions for the country and also for commercializing research output. So that's what I'm doing. I'm happy to be this. I've actually worked in this area. I've worked with a lot of breeders, and we have been doing a lot of work on these genetically engineered crops. And that's why I'm so interested in talking about it. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Cindy, and for accepting to even speak with us today and be with us. We'll have Timothy, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Mwangi. I work as a private consultant agronomist. At the moment, I'm consulting as a private person. I have been a member of SOCA, and at the same time, for the past 5 years, I've been working with the Research Triangle Institute International, where I was responsible for support of diverse agricultural production and improved productivity, whereby we are more keen on exactly how are the smallholders going to how are the small stakeholders going to adopt these GMO products? My interest on and the importance of this discussion is that because there are so many issues which you have heard about the application of the genetic engineering and also GMOs, and we know the goals of preparing the genetically modified crops and food, but we also appreciate the advantages and disadvantages. So we want to be clear on exactly where do we come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. I think Henry will join us, but as we start the discussion, I would just like to pose a question to Dr. Kirimi. What are the issues that we are looking at when we are talking about GMO technology? Why is it such an emotive subject? You know, most people talk about it, and you know, there's a lot of emotions attached to the GM technology and related technologies. What's the difference between the genetically modified food and food products, hybrids, and what we've been experiencing from the time of our forefathers, where we've had natural selection? What are the differences between all these big names that we are seeing currently? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nekesa, for that, and I'm really honored to be asked to for that. Although I want to say from the beginning, I'm not an expert necessarily on GMO, but I have really worked in this area for the last 15 years with a lot of experts in meetings and trying to work on crops at different levels on the GMO. I want to say why is GMO very emotive, as just as you have said. I'll say it's a natural part of human beings. In the fact that anything new, when it comes and it disrupts anything which is being done in the world, it becomes a problem. A case in point, I'll give you quickly. When the motor cars were introduced in the early 1900, the main form of transport at that time were horses and horse carriage. And when they were introduced, everybody argued that the motor cars are going to kill people. You have to have somebody in front of the car waving aloud the car is coming just to ensure that there's no death. And they were even given a speed limit which was lower than the horse. But now that was something which happened. There was also argument about jobs and all that. So that's natural. The second thing why it's also a problem is also because of the fact that it's something which we eat. So it's something which as a problem because we also consume. The other major actually problem is what we call the narrative. Who sets the narrative? The narrative is generally set by the media, and the media generally work on things which are controversial, and those are the things which they normally communicate more about, and then that way it becomes a controversial issue. But I think the last one, which I want to say, which is very important, is also the lack of the scientists' ability to communicate. Because when scientists do their science, they expect once they get whatever they get, the world is going to accept what they have done with open hands. And they don't have what we call a communication strategy. They don't communicate what they are doing. They don't carry people along. They don't have a stakeholders engagement to ensure that this. So that is why there is a major problem of that. And then the issues which we are dealing with is, should they be labeled? Should they be allowed to be used? Should publication? What are those publications? Are they sponsored by the companies which deal with the GMOs, or who should eat them? And after eating them, what happens? So that is the controversy. Now, first of all, I want then to go ahead quickly then define what is a GMO. GMO is generally genetically modified organism, is the main common term which is used by consumers and popular media to describe the plant or animal or any microorganism that has a genetic material changed using technology that generally involves the specific modification of a DNA, including the transfer of specific DNA from one organism to another or from one plant to another. Scientists often refer this to process as genetic engineering, so actually scientists don't use the GMO. So, but then the first crops which were done, that was in 1990, and in the US, they were allowed to be grown in 1996. So if you have ever lived in the US, if you have ever visited in the US, if you have eaten any cereals or anything which has some sugar, usually it is high fructose sugar. That means you have eaten GMO, even most of the cereals which are eaten in Kenya, because they are important and they use high fructose sugar. So, and all that is GMO. And what is the difference between GMO and hybrid? An hybrid is generally a crop or a plant which is created by breeders. So this is actively using breeders, where breeders take two plants which could be different varieties from different diverse populations. So they must be completely segregated population. Then when you bring these plants together, which are from the same species together, and you cross them through pollination, you can do it by hand, or it can do by wind or birds or insects. In that way, then you create a plant which is better than the two mothers, or the father and the mother. That is what we call an hybrid. In science, it's called heterolysis. Heterolysis is where you put two different population plants from two different population, segregated population. You put them together, you get one become a giant, or it has traits which you need. That is what we call an hybrid. Then the normal crop, what is non-normal, is where there is a process of, or most of the crops, there is a process of breeding. And the pollination is done naturally, either by bees, by wind, by water, by birds, by whatever means. That is normally a crop. But I just want to say something a little bit here. What we call, as Nekesa has said, our forefathers have been eating as natural crop may not be as natural as you think. Because I'm sure most of you here have ever eaten a sweet potato. And all of you think that sweet potato came from Kenya or Africa. No, it came from the Indian mountains in South America. And research which was done by my colleagues just the other day, a few years ago, 5 years ago, discovered that all sweet potato used in the world today have a genetic material from a bacteria, which naturally has been able to be inserted into the sweet potato to give it some of the characteristics it has. So whenever you eat a sweet potato, know you're eating a GMO, because the sweet potato have a genetic material from a bacteria. So there is naturally occurring GMO. There is also naturally occurring hybrid, where the breeding, although materials could have been very much segregated, for some reason these materials come together, and then they are able to have their pollination, and they produce natural hybrid. I also want to say that another issue which most people think that most people talk about is that the food we are eating today, if you're old enough as I am, you realize the tomato you are eating today is completely different from the tomato which you are eating 20 years or 30 years ago. So I want to say there is very little of what we are eating today which is natural. The only difference is that the process of breeding, which has been done either naturally, that means you grow crops, and then as you grow crop, you go to your land, and when you go to your land, you find one crop which is doing some of the plants which are doing better than others, and then farmers naturally, and that is actually how breeding of maize occurred, how breeding of wheat occurred, how breeding of watermelon and everything. There were things, or even banana. There were things like banana as seed, but the bananas we eat today has no seed, and it occurred almost naturally. So it's where farmers go to their farm, and when they find something looking better or behaving better as the way they want, they pick it up and then plant it again. And in the process of those selection by the farmers, we have some of the crops we call natural today. So there is nothing really natural. Most of them are being selected by the farmers. It's only of late that now it's not necessarily the farmers, but it has been scientists doing it by looking at the science, using what we call, right now we are talking about breeding is mathematical breeding, where you think about it, you first of all think about mathematically breeding, and then you put this population together and you create this breeding. So the breeding occurs. Breeding normally takes around between 8 years to around 20 years, depending on the crop. When you do genetic modification, The difference is, and I just want to be clear, genetic modification does not mean having a plant, having a bacteria or an animal genetic material. It could be having exactly getting a plant like potato or sweet potato and getting the wild variety and identifying the traits, the wild variety like disease resistant, drought resistant, and identifying those DNA clusters, the clusters where they confer those desirable qualities, and then you are able to get it. Now you're able to get those parts of that DNA and insert into the now what we call the common plant. And when you insert that one, you confer to it the desirable characteristic of good taste, good color, good whatever it is. So that is what happens. Sometimes you can also use bacteria genetics material and you can do it. So it can be done using plants. It can be done plants of the same species of the same species and all that. So that is the process we call genetic modification or genetic engineering. And that is the difference between all these crops. Thank you. I don't know whether, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I think you're bringing in other issues that we can probably revisit in terms of the same species and then the discussion that would follow. But then what exactly do we need, especially when we are talking about the requirements of producing GM foods? And this question is directed to Jen Musindi. And in this case, we are looking at what must we do to protect the EU-focused horticultural production. Remember that the EU have their own regulations from potential contamination by the GMO, maybe via insect pollination. What are we talking about when we talk about safeguarding that particular market and protecting this market, Jen?
Thanks, Nekesa. What I'm worried about with the GMO debate is that whether by design or by choice, we don't have enough information on it. So the lack of information is making us fill the void with a lot of feelings and innuendo and, as you say, emotion. So we don't have enough information to be able to say for sure that this is a safe product. But assuming it's a safe product, what is needed to do this is the biotechnology institute that we have in Kenya that regulates GMO has very strict standards for producing these GMO products. For example, you need to have a buffer area around your farm if you're going to produce these GMO products. You need to declare to them the biosafety directorate. You need to declare to them that you are producing these products. They need to monitor your production and make sure there's no cross contamination with any other product. And if you follow all these instructions from them, then you should be able to produce a product that only you is affected. You're not affecting your neighbors. To protect our EU market, the advantage we have is that, and it's, I believe, a short-term advantage, is that the products that we are selling into the EU have no GMO species with us. So we know that whatever we are producing, especially, I think the biggest product that we have in volume is beans. And then we have the fruits. We don't have GMO products yet, to my knowledge. So at least for that, we have to ensure that that remains as is. We don't bring in those germplasm for now to that is GMO to produce until our market accepts. And remember, our market is just the way we are. If we don't have information, they also don't have information. So for them to accept this product, it will take a bit of time. So we will continue giving them what they ask for, but we just have to make sure that seed that we give to them, that product, that the produce that we give to them, there is no GMO alternative in Kenya at that time. And if we follow the biosafety regulations, I believe we can convince any market that we are taking care of their product to make sure that they don't get product that they don't ask for. Because remember, they cannot test to say that this is GMO or not, the way that we are testing for chemicals. Now, the biggest disadvantage, again, as Africans we are not used to producing written evidence. We are used to telling stories. So farmers need to be clear on, you need to keep evidence that this, the product that you have has no contamination whatsoever. And with that, there's a lot of recording that now will need to go into the processes. I'm happy that we are now embracing the use of standards. Many people think standards come to add expenses to your processes, but no, it makes you more efficient and presents you with evidence that you have done your due diligence to ensure that you're producing for your customers what they require. Now, what we need to know is, from information that is available, GMO technology is very specific to a certain problem. For example, if you get a maize, it will remove, for example, the BT maize is supposed to get rid of a worm that is in the maize. It's not a sure bet. How do I say it? It will not produce more because it's a BT maize. It will only remove one aspect of the problem, of a problem that the maize has. So we need to be very careful in adapting this technology. We need to be sure that of why we are adapting it, and therefore that's why I said in the beginning, we need to give as much information as possible into the market for people to make informed decisions. I think I'll stop there for now, but I'd like to ask Dr. Cindy, from what he said, these scientists, for us to be more confident, do they operate within parameters? Because we know there are some mischievous scientists that can do, they can test, if they're let free into a lab, they will do things that we don't know. So are there parameters that they are asked to sign on to, or everybody just goes, into a lab and decides what to test and what to mix and what to produce? Thanks, Nekesa.
Thank you, Jen. Kirimi, maybe not that question. We'll get back to you on that one in terms of the ethics surrounding production when it comes to GM food products. So I would like to ask Tim Mwangi, is there a market for GMO produce, and is the government just, or is the government just seeking to tackle food security? I think part of the reason why the ban was lifted was issues around food security, issues around crops that are drought tolerant. What are the market opportunities when we are looking at the space of GM, and what is required for those interested in commercial opportunities? How will this be done without affecting production rights of those who are probably not for this kind of technology?
Thank you, madam. My name is Timothy Mwangi again. Yes, there are market opportunities for GMO products, and actually, if we adhere to all the regulations as has been stated by the previous speakers, there is market for that. However, we need to notice that the government has actually allowed the GMOs products to come into the country because of food security. Though we are very clear in our minds that the food security issues cannot be sorted out by GMO only. We need to acknowledge and accept and utilize all the other factors which are required for food production, which includes the water, the weather. We also need to consider the issues to do with the agronomy of the crop, the choice of the crop, and at the same time, choose the areas that you're going to grow what crops. I remember during the colonial period, we had, since up to, I think up to 1980, we had zoned zones whereby you could tell this is a coffee zone, this is a sisal zone, this is a tea zone, and now we have the forest. We need to go back to that to ensure that we have food security. Going back to the SIM, we noticed that if we go ahead and produce more than we require, the extra food produced can be sold. And at the moment, I believe that we do have tomatoes and chilies for sale. We also have seen other countries which are already utilizing the GMOs, like South Africa. They already have already decided on exactly which crops to grow on that. And one of them is corn, the yellow corn, which is basically that's yellow maize, which is basically for animals. And also they are also doing the white maize for human consumption. But for what is required for those who are interested in these commercial opportunities, we need to look into exactly what other countries have done. The EU have got regulations which they started off, I think, back in 1997, and these rules declares that one, for you to utilize the market opportunities or the commercial opportunities which are there, we need to have, the country has to have to adhere to guidelines and also biosafety regulations. And one thing that, for example, if you are to export to, say, for example, you are to export to any other country, including the EU, you need to do a pre-market authorization. That is, the country that is exporting required to give an authorization that whatever has been produced in the country of origin, that's the, for example, Kenya is producing that, we need to declare that whatever we are sending out has been grown as per the regulations and requirements of that product. Another one which is also required for you, as Jen declared that one very well, is traceability. You have to demonstrate traceability, that whatever product that you are growing is traceable to the source. You can actually, you have all the documentations, you have all the requirements that are required and the traceability requirements, such that you can, it will not be mixed, or it will not be mixed by any other, with any other products that is not GMO. Another requirement for those who are interested in the commercial opportunities is that you need to label and also you declare. Labeling, there are specifications on exactly how you need to label your products, and that one, for those ones who are interested, they can actually refer to the Biosafety Authority of Kenya. Now, you asked a question on exactly how will this be done without affecting the production rights of those against the technology. One of the items that we require to adhere to mainly is adhere to the guidelines, and as I have always repeated again, and also the biosafety regulations which are required to grow these crops. Of course, the countries which are producing already the GMO crops are doing it in plantations, big farms, so that we can adhere to the buffer zone. I don't know whether it has changed, but there before it was, the buffer zone was supposed to be about 100 meters from the crop that is not GMO. The good example is what we have in South Africa. And also we need to also look into exactly how soybeans is being grown in the US, and also any other country that is also doing that. But mainly the US, also in the EU, and also in South Africa. Now, another thing that we also need to, as a government, they need to regulate, and they have been regulating, and I'm not doubting that, they have been regulating the research and development, so that we are very clear on that whatever product that we have is not going to escape and go to the environment without being controlled. We also, as the government also requires to improve on and set up strict regulations on what can be imported in the country. From the declaration from the president, we did not get exactly what are our limitations. What can we import from outside the country that is GMO? and how is it going to be imported to the country? I remember reading somewhere that in Malawi, when they were at the hunger, what they did is that they controlled that you could not import the GMO, but if it's corn, if it's maize, you only import which is already processed. Again, we also need very strict regulations and rules, and also punitive punishments for anybody who violates these rules on exactly what we can export and in what form can we export it. So those ones are the ones which are quite important when we are going to check on the production rights of the other people. Let me leave it for that for now, and now for that, we'll come back to it later. Thank you.
Thanks, Timothy. That's very elaborative, and I like that you've actually put in place the processes that the farmers or the organizations that would be interested to follow protocol would do. Basically, that's what we need. We need to understand what are the processes that are involved in all this. As we wait for Henry to join in, I'll throw in a question, but also remember that those in the audience who are listening can raise up their hands to ask for questions, to ask questions directly to the speakers. And some of the regulations when you're doing this is that you have a maximum of 3 minutes to contribute or to ask your questions. You speak and will not allow interruptions between the speakers, so do not also interrupt the other speaker. We also need to be respectful of each other. So if you have some things to say, be respectful. And also we'll take back the mic after 3 minutes. So that's, if you're in the audience, please feel free to raise your hand and also be able to ask questions or contribute to this discussion. I see David has joined. I don't know if he'll be able to join us just to give us the farmer perspective. But then there's a question about the policies Timothy has brought in. But then when you're looking at the debate in the public spaces, it shows that clearly Kenyans have a desire to be part of the policy development and also not to be caught by surprises, because I think this caught us by surprise. It's something that we had forgotten. I think the last time there was such a discussion was 2012. What is the process of engagement, and how do we ensure that we have inclusive engagement in the policy space in contributing towards the GM debate and even other matters that would be helpful for us to understand GMO itself. I'll throw this at Lydia and Jen to respond to this, as probably I hope Henry can manage to join in because he would have really been helpful on that, but he's having issues with connectivity. So Lydia, I will throw this to you just to help us understand what is this process that we need to go through, and also assisted by Jen in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Nekesa. And even for the question on policy. So to begin with, public participation is a right that has been enshrined in the Kenyan Constitution. And the fact that this came as a declaration without public consultation, and given, of course, the emotion that it evokes, and also that it has been a while since this was discussed, has already resulted in very huge public outcry. And this is because in 2012, the process was halted on the grounds of human health. So people are still that is still very fresh in the minds of Kenyans. And also the fact that we are also still recovering from a global pandemic. So the health concerns are still very fresh, whether verified or otherwise. Then it adds fuel to, of course, the raging fire. So that aspect, that the public participation principle was overlooked or violated in this case, of course, has really contributed to the public. And now I think, of course, there has also been a lot of development in terms of access to information with the proliferation of digitization. Now information is accessible at the touch of a button on your phone. So people are able to really very easily access information and also engage in discourses with countries that have had these kinds of experiences. So unlike in 2012, maybe where we would still have experienced significant challenges in access to information, that may not be the case. And this is across demographics. So you find that the conversation has taken off in whether it is the young or the old. That has really also evolved significantly. So the conversation, of course, will not happen as it did in 2012 because a lot of things have also changed. The other thing also is in terms of policy coherence. So yes, we understand that the motivation of lifting the ban was fueled by food insecurity. But the question begs, have we done enough with the conventional ways of solving our problems to the point of exhaustion now that we are seeking superior solutions? Because when you look at basic things, our chronic food insecurity, of course, there has been the evolution of policies, and we have to appreciate that, especially with the introduction of the structural adjustment programs in the 90s, that completely disrupted the way our production and marketing is done, because we have 80% of our production being done by the smallholder farmers. So when the government exited critical functions like marketing, aggregation of produce, provision of inputs, in the as part of complying to the SAPs, there wasn't sufficient private sector development in terms of institutions to take up the vacuum that had been left. So we've been grappling